She's Mina Kimes, the peripatetic ESPN NFL analyst, senior writer, podcast host, TV contributor, joining us on the program. Mina, good morning. How's morale?
Well, it's great. Now that you call me peripatetic, I don't think I've ever been called that in my life.
Well, you're busy. You're on a lot of different shows, NFL Live Monday through Friday, and then I saw you on Around the Horn. You're breaking down the games this weekend, and I said to Fritzy, Mina Kimes needs to come on because you were giving me some great insight there. So if you want to recap a little bit, but I did want to start with this. The most overrated storyline this weekend is what?
Ooh, the most overrated storyline. I don't know if people are serious about this, but Trevor Lawrence winning on Saturdays is kind of cracking me up as a stat. Yeah. A lot of very, let's just say, lesser quality schools in that Saturday record.
Okay, and the most underrated storyline.
For underrated, let me think. Usually it's like guys returning from injuries that come to mind for me. So I'll throw one out there. I actually think, we talked a lot after the Cowboys game a lot about Dak Prescott, which gave us, I think, more confidence going into this Niners game, certainly than we would have otherwise seen that performance. But I really thought the return of Leighton Vander Esch, Cowboys linebacker, was integral for playing San Francisco, because if they didn't have him, I think that defense wouldn't have a chance.
You brought up some things about the Giants now playing the Eagles. Eagles off last week. Giants seem like they got momentum. Danny Dimes, are they going to turn him loose? Is he going to run? So give the audience a little bit of a summation of what you saw the last time these two teams played.
Yeah, it was week 14, right? Because the final game of the season didn't count. And the Eagles, as a refresher, for people who have forgotten, absolutely trounced the Giants. Now, I was watching that and thinking, okay, how are these teams different? What could New York do differently? And then one thing that jumps out, of course, is the Giants were missing several players on their defense who returned, and you saw them make a contribution in the wild card game, especially in their secondary, Xavier Kinney, Adoree Jackson. But the Eagles also were missing Dallas Goedert, and the Giants are probably the worst, or one of the two worst defenses in the NFL at defending tight ends. You saw that on display also, by the way, with T.J. Hawkinson. I think for the Giants to have a shot on this, there's a lot of confidence right now coming off of the Minnesota game, and I do think it is earned. This is a Giants team that is extraordinarily well coached, has improved a lot over the course of the season, is agnostic when it comes to game planning offensively. They'll completely tailor their game plan to their opponents. However, you could not have drawn up a worse defensive game plan for them than what Minnesota did. Now, Eagles fans are a little bit worried because their defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, runs like a similar soft zone. But watching Week 14, even when they were in zone, I was just struck by how much better they are at tackling and closing than the Vikings are. And I think this Eagles pass defense weirdly might be underrated. I don't know. Do you guys feel that way? It feels almost like people forgot about the Eagles. I don't know if it's because Hurts is hurt or right. Like, this is a really dominant football team.
I don't think they have names. That's they don't have a Jalen Ramsey or an Aaron Donald. They're missing that. But I think and you watch more tape than I have certainly, but the offensive and defensive line, it feels like the Eagles have the best team for having both those offensive line, defensive line. Is that fair assessment? How they grade out?
1,000%. And that's an issue for the Giants because, Daniel Jones and Saquon were terrific last week, but Dexter Lawrence took over that football game. Yeah. And then unfortunately, who's their, nose tackle, who might be the best pass rushing nose tackle in football. But the Eagles, as you just said, have probably the best interior offensive line in the NFL. And then the other side, nobody really talks about their pass rush. But Hassan Reddick, who was an all-pro, I think that surprised some people, has had a hell of a year. And unfortunately for New York, outside of Andrew Thomas at left tackle, still a lot of weaknesses on that offensive line.
What do you see when you watch Brock Purdy?
I just, first of all, I'd say I enjoy watching him so much because he has so much dip on his chip. Like, he just will try sidearm throws, making plays on the run that I don't think we've seen like a Niners quarterback really do. It's very funny when there's pressure and he is able to make stuff happen outside of the pocket. But for the most part, watching him against Seattle, it's just watching someone kind of pilot a well-oiled machine, and you're hoping, and in the first half he wasn't very good, you're hoping that they can just, pull all the levers and execute because, I'm not the first person. The Niners offense is so well schemed up, and the skill players are so impossible to cover. You don't really need that much at quarterback. You don't need someone who's going to elevate things outside of a few plays here and there.
We talk about the Cowboys, and we always focus on the quarterbacking position. And Dak Prescott's talked about, certain things he needed to clean up. And Mike McCarthy talks about certain things that he needs to clean up. What exactly does he need to clean up?
Yeah, I actually think McCarthy's done a really good job this year, especially navigating some of the injuries. So when I watched them, and certainly when I watched them on this last weekend, outside of the, of course, extra point fiasco, they were pretty flawless. Dak this is his best game of the season, maybe the best game of his career, and obviously the turnovers is the thing you're going to go to first. But the thing about last week that struck me is, so a lot of Dak's turnovers happen because he throws into tight windows. Some of that is because the Cowboys receivers don't get a lot of separation, but it's also like Dak Prescott has never seen a seam ball he didn't want to rip. And watching him against the Bucs, he was still ripping him. Like, he was still throwing that ball into tight windows. In another universe, some of those could have been picked if they were tipped again. He had bad luck during the season, but I personally like that he has stuck to that aggression, because when the receivers actually come through and when, the offense is rolling, he is so hard to stop.
We want to come up with a new category. It's called RCI, Receiver Caused Interception, because
I like that.
Because there are moments where the wide receiver runs a different route, or he has it in his hands and it goes through, and then it's on the quarterback. Because Dak had, I think, 4 receiver-caused interceptions this year. Can you work that into NFL Live?
I love that. Honestly, it feels like there were more, to be honest. It was, yes, 1,000%. It is why interception rate is so deceiving. And it was such a bummer to me, too, that Week 18 he had that horrible game, because I was like, oh, this is what people actually who don't watch Dak closely think he's been all year. You know what I mean? He was awful. But for the most part, a lot of those interceptions really, really were not his fault.
And Orlovsky will love this, because he always blamed his receivers for all of his interceptions.
Yeah, but he's not like the biggest Dak. I don't know if he'll love it. But I do like the stat. We're
talking to Mina Kimes, NFL Live, Monday through Friday on the Mothership at 4 Eastern. I'm going to make you the GM or the owner of the Ravens. How do you clean this mess up?
Well, I actually really was encouraged by John Harbaugh coming out and saying that Lamar Jackson was going to help pick the next offensive coordinator. If you're a Ravens fan, that's the exact thing you want to hear. I want to say, giving Lamar Jackson anything close to the Deshaun Watson contract, huge deal with a ton of guaranteed money. By the way, the reports are he really wasn't offered that much, but it's always hard to get specifics about that relative to the other elite quarterbacks. But I get that, he has had injuries, but to me, you have to do it not just because of the caliber of play, the MVP season, the fact that everyone in the locker room seems to adore him and you want to reward your best players. But I don't really see what the Ravens would do if they didn't pay Lamar Jackson. They're not going to get one of the free agent or trade quarterbacks, I believe. And then if they were to get like a Godfather draft package from, one of the guys picking at the top, how many quarterbacks have we seen in the first round flame out over the last few years? It just feels like such a crapshoot when you have a bird in hand who has an elite skill set. So I would pay him. I would get it done this offseason, and then I would find an offensive coordinator who can grow the passing game as well as bringing in a number 1 wide receiver.
But I wonder if the Ravens can give him the deal the Browns gave to Deshaun Watson, because the other owners were reportedly angry that you're giving him $230 million guaranteed. Now, can the Ravens, who probably, voiced their displeasure with the Browns, do the same thing with Lamar Jackson?
I don't think they have to. There has to be a middle ground. So the reports were that they offered him less guaranteed money than Josh Allen got. And to me, if you guys know, being the highest paid quarterback is like being the oldest living human being. You just kind of lived longer. Like, it's just about the passage of time. And it felt like, okay, well, if you're doing the deal after, you got to give him more. And it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be fully guaranteed, but you have to offer him something that's commensurate not only with his value, but where the quarterback market is moving directionally.
I was wondering how many great quarterbacks we have in the NFL. I'm gonna have Brady and Aaron Rodgers emeritus, but Mahomes is great. Joe Burrow's great. Josh Allen's great. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, who else is great?
Great. I think you just named the guys in the top tier. I would personally put Justin Herbert in there. Not everybody agrees with that, but to me, he is an elite quarterback. I think Jalen Hurts has pushed himself into that conversation this season with his play as a passer, not just as a runner. I would say maybe great, somewhere between great and good. What's a good adjective? Awesome, I guess. Well, no, awesome sounds better than great. Really good. There's a lot of really good quarterbacks after that.
High end. How about?
Honestly, I think Trevor Lawrence is in there. I just think he's played such good football. I would put Dak Prescott in there, by the way. I also think he's played really, really, really good football. Those would probably be in that next tier for me.
Yeah, because I think we thought we were, moving on with Roethlisberger and Breeze, and we were going to be in a good spot where going to be all these great quarterbacks, and it feels like there's only three of them. I want to see Jalen Hurts in the playoffs. I want to see Dak Prescott in the playoffs because, to me, that's where we measure greatness, or we're ready to christen you as great when we say playoff results.
Well, guys, Dak Prescott, I can't overstate this enough. His performance against Tampa is certainly the best quarterbacking performance thus far the postseason, but honestly, one of the best, statistically, if you go into all the nerd stats, EPA per play and his efficiency, and it ranks up there with some of the best performances we've seen of the last 5 years. And people are kind of poo-pooing Tampa as being a terrible team, and they are a bad team, but that offense is not, or defense, pardon me, it was not terrible. And Todd Bowles is a very good defensive coordinator, and he just carved them up. I mean, I was so impressed by that game.
Great to talk to you, Mina. Thank you. We appreciate your time.
Bye, guys. Have a great day.
And that's Mina Kimes.